moment, we will kick off the evening with some laughter. We have the wonderful Grover Norquist, who is the winner of the 2013 Funniest DC Celebrity Contest and the president of Americans for Tax Reform. Would you please give Grover Norquist a warm welcome?
Bourbon. Neat. No ice. Certainly no water. I never drink water. Dick Cheney tortures people with it. Gives it an awkward aftertaste. I was wondering, when midgets play miniature golf, do they know? I'm not French. No brag, just fact. French people get all excited about Jerry Lewis, the late comedian, actor. Jerry Lewis every year would raise a bunch of money for muscular dystrophy. I myself, for some time now, have been mostly against muscular dystrophy. I think the man was just mean. I had a wife who used to, an aunt who used to raise money for syphilis. I thought that was unnecessary. Syphilis was doing just fine. I am delighted to be here. I run a taxpayer group. I fight against tax hikes. I support tax cuts. My view of tax cuts are word for word Mae West's view of sex, which is all tax cuts are good tax cuts. Even bad tax cuts are good tax cuts. I fight against all the Democrat effort to raise taxes. Oh, the Republicans have moments and impure thoughts. But Democrats are like a teenage boy on a prom date when it comes to tax increases. They keep coming back at it again and again in different ways. And the trick is to say no, no, no. You see, no, no, yes doesn't work. Big fan of Ayn Rand. We had a lot in common. We were both immigrants to this country. I grew up in Massachusetts before emigrating to the United States and deciding to stay. I guess politically I'd consider myself a libertarian, except they always overstate the case for a central government. While taxes are annoying, all this stuff from our friends, the nanny staters, the coercive utopians, our social and moral betters who have organized to make sacrifices themselves to get the government to make the rest of us run our lives the way they think we ought to. These are the people who mandated the toilets that don't flush completely, the cars you can't put your entire family into, the light bulbs that convince you you have cataracts. And on the Sabbath, you have to separate the green glass from the white glass from the brown glass for the recycling priests. I myself never recycle paper, not after what trees did to Sonny Bono. Matter of fact, the set of rules that our friends on the left have of what you have to do and what you are not allowed to do is slightly longer and more tedious than Leviticus. It goes on and on and on. You've probably seen the recent polling data. 25% of American high school students cannot find France on a map. I don't care. I want to assure the younger people in this audience that finding France on a map is not an important life skill. I myself have been to France several times, and it has never once required me to find France on a map. You call the nice people at American Airlines, and they will find France for you. If you insist, they'll find a particular city, and it's all included in the price of the ticket. I can afford to go because a few years ago I made $1 million. That all came about because, well, it started when I got an email from this nice Nigerian gentleman. And a couple weeks later, he came by with a suitcase with $1 million that he'd promised me. He said, you know, Mr. Norquist, I really appreciate your help, but before you responded, I must have sent out 1 million emails. Because it's not just making the money, you got to keep it. I have been saving money by buying extremely inexpensive health insurance. You've probably seen the ads on late night TV. Extremely inexpensive health insurance for Christian Scientists. Now, the coverage is a tad spotty. But when you go to the doctor's office, there's always plenty to read. So I go to the airport, and I find the world's best parking spot. And I get out of the car, and this nice policeman comes over and says, I'm sorry, but you're in the handicapped parking area. And I said, that's okay, officer. I'm not prejudiced. So we get on the plane, and we're about to take off, but they take a few minutes because they have to teach us how to put a seatbelt on and off. I'm thinking about this for a moment. There are 100, 200 of us in the plane. We all drove, Ubered, taxied to the airport, and in almost all of the 57 states, there are laws requiring you to wear a seatbelt in the car. Now, these are annoying laws, particularly if you're on the waiting list for a liver or kidney. But eventually, we did take off, and we headed off to France. Paris, to be specific. And you land in Paris, and it's the Champs-Élysées and the Eiffel Tower and the Arc de Triomphe. Really cool stuff. There's downside, too. It's full of French-type people. You keep backing into that stupid bidet thing. And there's no French toast anywhere. And then your friends, your French friends, right? They look down their nose at you, and they say, we in France, we have high culture. We have ballet, and we have the opera, and you Americans, you have low culture. You have the Kardashians and professional wrestling. Now, I'm a patriot, so I'm right back at them. And what is wrong with professional wrestling? The Kardashians are on their own. And they say, well, it's fixed. You know how it's going to end. I said, let me get this straight. We are in the middle, the intermission, of the classic ballet Cinderella. I am willing to bet you large quantities of your gaily colored but oddly shaped French currency that at the end of this ballet, the prince is not going home with one of the two ugly stepsisters because it's fixed. And the rest of European culture is not an improvement. How many times have you seen Macbeth? They named the play after him. Does he ever get to win? No. It's fixed. Now, if professional wrestling ran Macbeth, sometimes Macbeth would win, sometimes Macduff would win. They'd look at the ratings, they'd move from there. Does Othello ever turn to Desdemona and say, I'm sorry, I should have trusted you, let's have make-up sex? No, because it's fixed. Well, after this, they drag you to a museum. In Europe, everything's old, but the really old stuff they put in buildings and make the Americans go look at. So we're at the Louvre. And I'm doing well. I'm going right past one painting after another, lickety-split, boom, boom, boom. This is going well. And the French people are, no, you have to stay and linger and appreciate it and that stuff. And I'm looking at this painting, and it seems to be an orange on a table. So I go up, and there's a little gold plate thing that says orange on table. I said, I had that at 20 feet. In the United States, we have the Evelyn Wood speed reading course. A lot of Americans take it. Okay, you can read a novel in an hour. I studied under her brother, Bubba Woods, the Rapid Art Appreciation course. I can go right past these paintings and absorb the essence of the paintings in seconds, which takes you guys much longer. And I can do the Louvre in about 4 hours. If I have comfortable shoes, 3 hours, 45 minutes. And let me just give you a sense, something I picked up, one of the tricks that I find is helpful. The Louvre, I mean, it's like an old palace, right? And it's got all these halls, and they go back, and they double back on each other. And if you're not careful, you can get stuck going through the same room and looking at the same picture again for a second time for no good reason, okay? So what I do is once I've appreciated this painting, I put a thumbprint in the bottom left-hand corner of the painting. And that way, I don't get tricked into watching it again. So, when you go to France, you can leave the map at home, watch out for the bidet thing, and put your thumbprint in the bottom right-hand corner. And we're all set. Thank you. This lady is from Australia, and I've always wanted to go to Australia ever since I saw The Sound of Music. So